hands-on session will be about how to read the similarity report that we get for each student. But first of all, a short introduction of today's speaker. Dr. Danielle Polakin is an adjunct professor at the College of Education, as well as the instructional lead coach at Fusion Education Group. In both venues, she works with and coaches educators on providing an equitable, student-centered learning experience for all students. She holds a doctorate of education degree with a concentration in curriculum teaching and learning. So thanks, Professor Polakin, for facilitating today's workshop, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Light Center and Westcliff. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. My apologies, I had some dental work done, so my voice is a little strange. I don't usually sound like a frog, so I apologize ahead of time. Happy Friday Eve to all. And we're going to jump right into the how portion of our Turnitin agenda today. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction that was already provided for me, which is fantastic. We're going to talk a little bit about what you learned from the Why series, and then we're going to do a walkthrough. I'll show you from one of my previous students the similarity report, and we'll go through what that looks like and how we can dive a little bit deeper. And then we have a hands-on simulation for you in which you'll get a similarity report, a similarity report from us, and then you'll break out into groups, you'll review that report, and then you will come back and let us know if it is plagiarized or not. And then we'll have a little bit of time for a reflection task at the end, just to see how we're bringing all this together and making it back into our classrooms to support ourselves and our students. So just as a reminder, this is part of the how-to series. We had the why earlier, which got into some really great myth busting and information about Turnitin as a whole. And this one is going to be a bit more hands-on. We're going to get a little bit dirty when it comes to Turnitin. So do not sit back and relax. Take notes and get ready, because we're definitely going to be supporting each other in this process. The reflection task that you had last time, I just want to call out any big takeaways that you experienced. First, how many Turnitin functions do you use? We asked about that. Does anyone want to come off mute and let us know how many functions do you use now? And based upon the series, how many do you want to use in the future? What are you going to add? Professor Lipo was like, all of them, using all. Have to. We pay for it. We might as well use it. Who else? Drop in the chat. What have you used in the past, and what are you thinking about switching and using now based upon this series? And then after you think about that, what are some overall ideas about feedback that you use with your students? How do you want to change the feedback that you provide your students with? Yes, constructive tools to be able to give feedback, absolutely. And making sure that that feedback is actionable. And that's one of the things that we're going to look at today when the similarity report is, how can we take these numbers, these percentages and these numbers, and turn it into something the student can then action. They can take it and act out, change how they're researching, change how they're citing their resources. Making sure that we provide that personalized feedback. Sometimes we'll see the number come up and we're just like, it's over a certain amount, it must be plagiarized. And we really need to be intentional about looking into that report and providing detailed information on how the student can get that number down, or how the student can make it so that we're not immediately alerted, oh my gosh, the student plagiarized. What am I going to do? And then the one that I'm most interested in, if you could toss in the chat, what's your strategy when you read the similarity report? And if you don't have a strategy yet, that's fine. What is your familiarity with the similarity report? So toss in the chat. Yes. Look at each flag. Yes. Already we have a Turnitin master over here. Fantastic. Who else? How do you use that report, or how familiar are you with it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yes. So it sounds like we already have some really, really great best practices that are coming out. Perfect. So for some of you, this may be a little bit of a review, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you're teaching this term, we're coming up on some hefty assignments that are going to be turned in to us, and we want to make sure that we're grading those as equitably as possible. So I want to ask, before we dive into an actual report, when is something plagiarized? No, I don't have control, so I can't do the poll, but I want you to drop this answer in the chat. A similarity report of 50% proves that a student has plagiarized. Is that true or false? Drop in the chat. You open up, Turnitin, it says 50%. Proven. False. Excellent. Okay, great. Yes, this is false. Let's ramp it up though. What about a similarity report of 80%? True or false? This is plagiarism. True or false? Okay, we got some could be's, need to be evaluated. Clearly, we're all professors because the true or false option is not working out for us. We want a different layer. We want the maybe, possibly, it could happen. Excellent. So the biggest takeaway here is the fact that like there isn't necessarily a number that tells us when a student has plagiarized. Really what we're looking for is to dive deeper. The number alerts us that something is going on, that we need to give a little bit more attention, and we need to look a little bit deeper, maybe even talk to the student ahead of time. But there's no number that tells us, oh, kids plagiarized, automatic fail. And that's what we're going to look at today. Isn't necessarily that number, but when we dig deeper, what are we looking for? And how can we support the student in making sure that they're getting what they need, so that when we do look at this similarity report, we realize, oh, this is actually proving that they did do their assignment, that they did actually complete this in the way that I wanted them to. So like I said, it doesn't prove plagiarism. That's not the point of Turnitin. It's to alert us to the fact that we need to dive deeper. And now I want us to pay close attention. I'm going to lead you through a walkthrough of what the similarity report looks like. And as I go through, I want you to pay close attention to the percentage breakdown that's going to appear in the match overview. I also want you to note the kinds of match sources that are showing in that right-hand panel. And then I want us to think about the fact that some of these are templates. In our syllabus, we provide our students with certain templates. If you're in the education department, we'll provide you sometimes with a lesson planning template, and the Writing Center provides various kinds of templates. So I want us to look at the paper through the lens of a student and think, is this part of the actual template that I was given, and that's why it's being flagged for plagiarism? Or is this actually my work that's being flagged for plagiarism? So when we see that something is flagged, and this is what I want you to think about as I go through the similarity report, we want to ask ourselves these questions. First, are there in-text citations? So when a flag comes up and says, 6% plagiarized, okay, well, are there in-text citations for that? Because if there are, then that's a discussion that I have to have with the student about how much they're taking from a source for that in-text citation. Maybe I asked them to do that. Maybe I said, I want this amount of information. I want a table that shows me this from what you read. Did the student submit a rough draft? A lot of times we'll get back that there is a similarity to a Westcliff paper, and it may be the student's own paper, and not necessarily that they turned it in elsewhere, but Turnitin allows us to turn in multiple versions of a paper, especially if we're asking them to. If we're saying like, hey, submit your rough draft to me, even if we're not requiring them to send that through Turnitin, sometimes they use that. And then when it gets to us in that final paper, we're like, oh my gosh, 60%, they stole this paper from a Westcliff student. No, this is just their final draft. And they're actually being a diligent student and using the resources provided. And then the last but not least, is there a source that's being included? A lot of times when we ask our students, hey, we want use this case study and give me an explanation of, or take this primary source and relate it to. And a lot of times our students will use that source. They'll take that full case study, they'll take the speech, they'll take a lesson plan that we gave to them, and they'll put that in the appendix of their paper, or they'll put it in the beginning of their paper. Hey, this is what I'm referring to, professor. And then immediately 90% plagiarize. Well, that's not actually true. Yes, they're using our words, but we've asked them to do this based upon a case study or based upon a primary source. So we need to look and make sure, oh, it's actually not flagging the student's work, it's flagging what I've asked them to respond to. And then that becomes a situation where we talk to the student and say, hey, you don't actually have to copy and paste the case study in here. You don't really need to give me FDR speech. I kind of know it already, but thank you for that. So we're going to look through a student right now, and I'm going to go through the process that I typically go through and that I coach my teachers to go through. And then from there, I'll have you all work on your own similarity reports and come back and tell us what has been plagiarized and or how you would coach your student. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can bring up my own similarity report. Okay. So I'm grading my class, and I'm going through and I see here that one of my students, one of my really good students too, got it flagged at a 37%. And I'm like, oh, really? This isn't great. I'm gonna need to dig further on this. So what I do is I click on that little pencil piece. This is a past class, so that's why it's flagging this way. And then I head over here. Why isn't it here? I'll use this one instead. I head over here to the match overview section. And what that's going to do is it's going to highlight areas on the actual paper that relate to one of these matched sources. So the match overview is basically just saying, hey, we went through a bunch of stuff, not everything. It's not 100% conclusive. Wait, what? Okay. It's not 100% conclusive. We're just saying that when we searched, we matched up with a certain percentage of these resources. You can also download this, and what I'll give you is I'll give you like the downloaded similarity report. I prefer to do it in text so that I can then drag and drop students' comments in. Just makes it easier for me when I'm grading. But as we see here, 12% was presumed to be plagiarized or at least matched with a Westcliff paper. Now, one of the things that I love about doing it interactive in this way is that you can actually see where that came from. So it's not only telling you, hey, this is from a Westcliff student, but it's showing you this is pulled directly from this Westcliff paper. Or if we look at the USA Today part, this is pulled directly from this USA Today article. And this really helps us narrow down whether or not this is intended plagiarism or whether or not this is just a student being a little bit sloppy. When I click on the submitted Westcliff one and I see and I read through this, I realize, oh, this student paper is actually my student's paper. This is their rough draft, and I graded this earlier in the term. So this 12% isn't a reflection of, oh, they're grabbing someone else's stuff. It's actually a reflection of they did what I asked them to. Fantastic. I'm going to toss a comment in there, using these tools on the right-hand side and congratulate them on doing that. When we get to this part where it's an outside source, that's when we want to dig a little bit deeper. And that's when we want to start looking at how the student did or did not cite their sources. And we see here that this was taken directly from USA Today, and the student did not cite it. Now, do I think the student maliciously copied and pasted this one sentence? Probably not. But this is a time when I would write down in my notes that I need to go and talk to that student and say, hey, it looks like you took this from USA Today. Just make sure that you're citing that. Put it in quotes. And what's helpful about the pop-up is I can then go to that article and see, did the kid take anything else from here? Are they synthesizing the information? Are they summarizing the information? What's really going on here? Versus this kid just took it and they're not giving credit. And then also I want to go down and see if the student has actually included it in their sources. So I can see here, yep, they included USA Today in their sources. Their sources page is terrible. So obviously this is an APA situation that I need to call out the student on. Not only do we need to talk about when you should put in in-text citations, but how to properly cite an APA so this isn't flagged for plagiarism. And then there's this other part here, which is submitted to a different university. So this is an area where I want to be like, did my student buy a paper off of someone? Now, when we're looking at really current events and hot topics, this section submitted to a different university is going to be long. For example, this student wrote about Asian hate, which at the time of this course was huge in the news, huge in the media. So obviously there are going to be other students at other universities discussing this issue, and it's going to be flagged up here in our match report. The difference is seeing if the words are flagged versus, for example, stop the Asian hate, versus significant portions of their paper. If the significant portions of the paper are flagged, then I think to myself, okay, I need to talk to the student about purchasing someone else's paper or referencing someone else's paper. Like I mentioned about the template piece, the template that we provide for APA makes it so that the student enters something into that header and sometimes into a footer. So it's not the student's fault here that their header matches someone else's paper that's about Asian hate. So from this, we see that yes, 17% of the paper, it has been matched with sources that are similar, but in actuality, this is 100% the student's work. And furthermore, I need to give them feedback on how to better cite their sources and work with APA. Do people feel confident enough to take this into their own hands? Yes, I know it's early for some of you. You're like, why are you making me do this so early in the morning? And some of you are like, let's rock and roll. All right, so I'm going to toss in the chat. Here, what I'll do is, where's my...
Professor, there's a question from Professor Sheridan. He asks, when can students see the similarity of an uploaded essay?
It's not instantaneous. Once they upload it, it's not going to come back immediately. Usually for like a full detailed match, it'll take about 24 hours. So we want to make sure that we're asking our students if this is a step in their process, that we're saying, hey, work backwards plan that it's going to take a little while for you to get this similarity report back before you submit for your final grade, before you submit for your final grade. Additionally, Turnitin is always being updated. Eve, can you break people into breakout groups? Oh, here it is. Turnitin is always being updated. So sometimes what will spark a similarity what won't spark a similarity now will spark a similarity in the future. Doesn't necessarily mean that the student has plagiarized, just means that that paper has now recirculated and other students are taking similar ideas. So when a student submits their paper and then, like, let's say submits their paper 24 hours after that, there may be a greater similarity, number one, because their rough draft is now in Turnitin. And number two, there may be other sources that are speaking to that topic, especially if it's a contemporary hot button issue. So what I'm going to do is put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to give you room captains, and your room captains are in charge of dispersing the similarity report, which I will put in the chat. So room 1, your room captain is going to be Dr. Davis, and you're going to use that similarity report. Room 2, your captain is going to be Professor Sevilla, and your similarity report is that one.
Professor King, can you please leave one group in this main room for recording purposes? Thank you.
Yes. Let me do that. There we go. All right. Room 3, your captain is Captain Fernandez. And your similarity report is going to be this one. Room 4, you have Captain Lee as your captain. And this is your similarity report. Room 5, you are lucky to have Captain Nino. Who is your captain? And this will be your similarity report. Ooh, room 6, this is rough. I'm gonna go with Captain Crow, just because that sounds pretty awesome. So Captain Crow, here you go. And let's see. Captain Oberman. Is our room captain. And last but not least, Captain Nelson, which does sound like an actual captain, is our last room captain. All righty, go into your rooms and figure out if your similarity report is documenting plagiarism with this student. Look at you, lucky crew. I am your captain. And here is your similarity report. So take a minute, look through it.
Can you send me back to room 10?
Sure. Who needs to be in room 10?
Captain Nelson.
Captain Nelson.
Okay. Yeah, my microphone was messed up. I'm sorry.
I got you. Okay. Who had a question?
And which is our similarity report? Probably you could screen share. It's not letting me in to open any report by link.
Let me see.
Are you using your Westcliff account for this? Because I was able to open it with my Westcliff account.
It's
you need to be logged into
automatically to another browser. That is, I'll just try to copy and paste it. And which is our report, Jenny?
Ours is the last one, the bottom one.
The last one, the bottom one. Thank you so much. I'll try.
By student wrong.
I need to go to my browser.
So let's start talking about this.
Yes, it works. Thank you.
So this comes back as a 44%. What do we think?
Just to make sure we have the one that is regarding the plan, the lesson plan for Mandarin. All right. Okay. Well, the thing is, first I need to know what type of assignment it is. Second, I need to know what type of format is supposed to be used, and that helps guide me as to what it is I need to look for. Therefore, when I look at this particular assignment, I'm seeing that some areas, particularly the highlighted step on how-tos, is highly has a high similarity index. So I have to then guess, or not guess, but assess that against other students' how-tos to see if they're doing the right or the same type of, writing, doing and writing kind of writing.
Exactly. And with lesson plans, one of the things that we're asking students to do is to extract Common Core standards. So those are going to be plagiarized. We're also asking the students to put it into a template. Like you said, like what is this student doing? They're filling out a template. That's going to come back as plagiarized. So right off the bat, like you said, we have more questions than we have answers. 44% isn't saying the student is plagiarized. 44% could be telling me the student's doing it the way that I asked them to. Really, really good digging. Excellent detective skills.
There's pretty big section where part of the words are highlighted and some functional words are not. What does that mean? I don't think the student was paraphrasing, because these are rather coherent thoughts. You cannot borrow from somewhere piece by piece. If we could see the source, because the source is indicated, but we cannot switch and see where it comes from. I mean,
so if you scroll down to page, it's like the third to last page, the red says submitted to Westcliff University. So we know that the student actually submitted this paper before, and that's what it's being flagged as.
So it is possible that it is this same student's paper, for example, DQ or some preparatory paper. Then, of course, it's not plagiarism. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to close up the rooms and bring everyone back and see.
Professor Danny, sorry. The group they moved to the chat room without copying the link, so we didn't manage to open it.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Oh.
And we're kicked back. There we go. Okay.
All right. So whose paper was plagiarized? Who had a plagiarized paper?
Oh.
None. None of these papers were plagiarized. Yay!
Well back.
Faith in our students, everyone. Have faith in our students. It was a cliffhanger. Let me tell you, for the morning, it was quite a cliffhanger. So some of the things that I know we're at time, but some of the things that I want you to think of as you kind of exit this space is what feelings arise for you when you see a high similarity report. We don't want it to be anxiety driven. We don't want it to be, we're like, oh, now I'm going to have to fail this student. I'm going to have to talk to Dr. Chancho. I'm going to have to go through all these terrible processes. No. So let's check ourselves when we see that similarity report and not respond emotionally. Then when we look at a similarity report, let's reprogram ourselves to take that first step and look with curiosity instead of, oh, this kid is definitely did something wrong. Hey, I'm curious, what's going on with this kid? Then as we move into away from this Turnitin part, what best practices are we going to take with us so that we can use this in the future as a tool to support, as opposed to as a tool to kind of distance ourselves from the students and what they need? And then last and final, I always want to know how your ideas have changed about plagiarism and about this tool because of this How and Why series.